100X Club, this is Matthew, and I'm giving you the entire episode in 15 seconds. We want to know where the most fun Web3 games call home because we want to play them, and we're bullish gamers. To discover this, we've been sitting down with top-tier platforms and blockchains to talk about why they could win that Web3 gaming race. And we are back with another episode in this series. This time, we're looking at Ronin with special guest Hantao, co-founder of Moku and friend of Ronin. We're asking questions like, how is Ronin forged for gamers in a way that their competitors are not? And what the heck is a closed ecosystem? And is curation better for gaming than total decentralization? You're going to love it. We had a blast. Let's go. This is 100X Gaming. We are joined by special guest Hantao. So excited to have you here, man. We are jumping into a conversation mostly centering around Ronin. If you don't know who that is, you're probably not in Web3 gaming yet. We've had AVAX Gaming on. We've had a few others talking specifically about like, hey, let's talk about blockchains and where gaming is going to take place. One of that everyone references, I think it was our conversation with Xterio actually, when we asked him like, who do you see as threats or competitors? He referenced Ronin as like, yeah, these guys, they got their stuff together. And so when we are having these conversations focused on where do gamers go to play games in Web3, Ronin is pretty much always in the conversation. But this is the first time we've had a conversation focused around them. So welcome, Han. I would love to know, who is Hantao? What do you do in Web3? What's your story, man? Before we dig into everything this episode has to offer, we want to highlight the awesome partners who sponsor this podcast and make it possible for us to work full-time on 100X. They're legends, and we appreciate them for supporting us. Astrobit is the king of automated trading, and now they've introduced a freemium model. Put those trading fees to use. How does it work? Sign up to an exchange with one of Astrobit's affiliate links and receive at least 30 free credits as a loyalty bonus. Then earn credits on your trading fees. The more you trade, the more credits you can generate. Use those credits towards trading bots and strategies. In other words, you can create a passive income stream at no cost. Find more deets in the description below. Let's talk about Reactor, a proof-of-work blockchain that introduces a brand new economic model, deep-in mining software, a gaming distribution platform, the RKR token, and their game, Minions of Steel, that's proving their thesis by seamlessly integrating proof-of-work token mining with gaming. Through allowing players to mine with their own GPU while playing, not only do they essentially make gaming free, they make software free, and they present an AI-proof income for everyone. If you want to take a glimpse into the future and get there early, explore Reactor's ecosystem at the link below. Crypto does not need to be complicated. Cadena is building the human layer of blockchain by giving the power back to the people and allowing them to build products that make a difference for humanity. Founded by ex-JP Morgan and SEC blockchain leads, Cadena develops easy-to-understand, human-readable tools and solutions that focus on the long-term development of the space, not just short-term gains. Simply put, if we want real, regular people to enter and enjoy Web3, Cadena is making a way. To learn more, check out Cadena.io, follow them on Twitter at Cadena_IO, or watch our episode with them.
Yeah, sure. So I've had over 10 years of experience in traditional gaming. So this is Web2 gaming. And what I did was primarily working with brands, creators. Some of them were featured on YouTube Rewind, Mr. Beast Rewind, and also esports for 4 years as well. Had my own team and sold it through merger and acquisition to Overtime. And then I came into the space because I was like, oh, guilds are kind of like esports teams. And then when I got into the space, it was so much worse because everybody didn't really know what they were doing. And esports also had the same vibes. So I came in, I was looking around what to do, and luckily I found a couple of the co-founders and we started Moku. It was called something else back then, but we have Moku now, and it was like a guild, and then we made it like a data company, and then now we have Moku.
Nice. And I think that's really interesting because I actually heard of Moku through another game that you guys had on the Question platform as well, Shrapnel. I mean, I'm a huge Shrapnel fan, so when I saw Shrapnel was on there, and then also I watched Andy Slav, so it was just all got connected, and then I really started falling in love with everything that Moku is building to the point where I was just racking up points this new season, which led to this conversation. But what really led you guys to the Ronin ecosystem? What did Moku start in the Ronin ecosystem, or did you guys find connections on there and just started falling in love with everything that Ronin is building?
Yeah, so we actually started working with Ronin when SLP was going to zero, and everybody was like panicking, um, because not only did SLP go to zero, ETH went from 4K to 2K, and then to 900. Right? Everybody was like panicking, like, "Oh my God, is this over?" Because this is like the first bear market for many people, right? And they just realized, like, "Oh shit." Um, Everybody's taking out their money, everybody's leaving the space, what's going on? So everybody was really, really scared. And so that's when we actually started working with Ronin. I think it was like 2.5 to 3 years ago on their creator program, because they had so many creators due to the boom in SLP, and everybody was like, oh, here's how you can make a team, here's how you can play Axie and farm. And there's so many creators, and then during that time every creator was like fudding. I'm not going to name names, but we know many creators were fudding Axie around that time, and they're like, oh shit. So we came in, we just really helped them out with building some processes and rewards for creators to retain them, and just change around a lot of how we were communicating releases and stuff. And then throughout the way, we were actually raising our first round for Moku when the bridge got hacked as well. So, oh, okay, we're back. And then when we were raising our round, the bridge got hacked, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, Ronin's over," right? Because they lost so much money. But I think what we've seen throughout all of these trials and tribulations is that Ronin has always kept building, and we've been there alongside them for so long, just like in the trenches and fighting for our way up. And now we're seeing some fruits of the labor.
I want to define what Ronin is as far as like a blockchain that stands out from the others. And maybe that will help bring the story back to why you guys came over there in the first place. I mentioned to you off camera that we have had a lot of conversations about these the layer ones, the blockchains, the places that want to be like a hub for gaming. And most of them, the tagline is like the blockchain for Web3 gaming, or the place that's going to capture Web3 gaming, or the place where games build, things like that. Ronin's tagline that I've seen is specifically like the blockchain for gamers. And I'm curious if you could just break down like why Ronin is the best place for gamers themselves. So for me, I play all the games. That's why we even have these conversations. So why is Ronin the best place for gamers?
Yeah, so I will give my personal opinion about this, and then I'll give like my reasoning, I think, of that question.
Yeah, well, I guess we should say that like this is not just for anyone listening. Ronin is not sponsoring this episode. We wanted to have a conversation about it. You're not on Ronin's team. We wanted to have a conversation about it. Like this is just two people coming together. I guess me and Caesar are like one man. Two people coming together to talk about why Ronin could be bullish.
One very large man.
Yes.
You two together. So I think when we look at the space in general, we see a lot of layer ones and layer twos, right? So many.
Everyone wants to be the platform.
Yeah, there's like people building on layer threes, like building on their own layers. Like everyone wants their own chain because everybody wants their own block space, right? Because that's at the core of like what everybody wants, and they also want their own liquidity as well. But when we look at the space, like the games that go to the chains, they want two things. They want money because they want capital to build a game, and they also want players, which is interesting because when you look at how blockchains give grants to games, they do it in a way where there's milestones based on users, wallets, volume, right? So chains are looking at the games as UA tools, and the chains are looking at themselves as infrastructure providers and tooling. So they're looking at themselves like, oh, I am a console, like I'm Apple, right? Or like the iOS store, or I'm a console where I'm just providing the infrastructure and other people are building the games, right? But then the games are looking at this chains and like, wait, I thought you were going to give me players.
Yeah, they want it to be Steam, not Apple.
Exactly. Right? Because we see that like, hey, even though Apple has an iOS app store, you still need to do user acquisition for your game. So we're seeing this like crossroad where games want users from the chain and the chain wants users from the games. And I think this is why Ronin's a little bit different and has this moat. Is Ronin is the only chain so far that has really gotten significant user acquisition. And this is primarily from their days playing Axie, right? Like they're the only ones that have hit critical mass, like bringing on users to the chain from Web 2. Because everybody's like, oh, we're going to onboard users from Web 2. Like, no, you didn't. Right? If you look at Axie, there was millions of DAU and people jumped through like Binance, Coinbase, their centralized exchange, bridging their ETH to ETH mainnet, and then bridging it to Ronin. So like they were doing all those hard steps in order to actually onboard because the reward was there for them and the incentive was there for them. So they actually came on board. And Ronin was the only one that actually reached scale through Axie. So I think that's why when games look at it like, oh, there's actually users here, because that's why they had users, right?
Yeah,
I mean, on that, I saw a tweet from Nathan, 0xx Nathan, yesterday, I think, that said, and this shocked me, did not realize this, that Ronin ranks second among most used blockchains in regards to daily active addresses. That would have had no idea. Like I wouldn't have put them in my mind. And I think a lot of that is because of Pixels right now. But yeah, that's crazy. Like you referenced, before it was Axie, now it's Axie and Pixels. You've got way more people using it than almost any other blockchain anywhere, not just talking about gaming, like just blockchains in general.
Yeah, so it's just like we're seeing the network effects, right? Because if you think about like traditional marketing, what's the best way to get users is word of mouth, because it's coming from a source of trust rather than from a new source of discovery. Because when you look at an ad on TikTok or somewhere else, you just skip it right away, right? Because we're so used to seeing advertisements. And you have to have recommendations from other people to actually trust something and be like, okay, I'll go try that out. It's like, hey, what place should I go eat at? And then you get a recommendation from a friend, like you'll trust that friend unless they have really bad taste. So I think in terms of like blockchains, when we're looking at, oh, why do games want to build on Ronin? It's because they've gone through this like so much over the last 3-4 years, building out Axie, building out Ronin. They're like, they are the only ones that have reached significant scale and like, oh shit, how do we solve these problems? Because Axie used to be on ETH. Like all their Axies used to be on Ethereum mainnet, and they were like, wait, we can't do this because it's too expensive. There's not enough block space. So they migrated to their own chain and they made their own wallet. They made their own chain. They made their own like liquidity pools, all these things and infrastructure to actually support the games. So they've been through that journey and like they understand like, hey, if we're going to get these games and have real games of scale, we have to build the infrastructure for it. So what we're seeing is like Pixels came onto the chain. Pixels, when they were on their previous chain, they had like 3,000, 4,000 DAU, right? And I had a conversation with Luke about this when they were first starting. They're like, hey, we have to have a really good bridge experience because I'm scared of people leaving the game. Like that was his fear. He didn't want to lose the 3,000 DAU that were playing the game. And then when he came to Ronin, the first day was like 8 to 10,000 DAU. So we're seeing like Ronin actually having the infrastructure to support these games.
And speaking on how like the games that are coming to Ronin, I mean, outside of Pixels, we also see Kydro jumping in. We see Ragnarok also entering the conversation in the last month or so. What do you think? Is it the user acquisitions or the users that are already living in Ronin that are attracting these games, or is it something else? Is it something more like, is it the culture that Ronin is really creating that is leading these big IPs to want to come to Ronin and choosing Ronin as their home?
Yeah, so I think it's like multiple factors. The first one is definitely having gamers, because if you think about how difficult it actually is to onboard somebody to play Web3 games, like they have to make a wallet, they might have to KYC, they have to even onboard liquidity. They can't just start playing, right? So I think a lot of what's been built, especially even by Pixels, is we can see the onboarding flow. You literally just sign up with an email and you can start playing, right? And then once you experience the game, that's when you start like, oh, should I buy a VIP? Should I upgrade in the game? Should I get additional things? And like the what Ronin has also built is this like mentality and loyalty that has stayed because the team has just kept relentlessly building, right? And they've built that trust with the community. Like, hey, if something sucks, people will call it out and they'll fix it. And then this culture that they built of like loyalty and just having that brand affiliation with Ronin, I think is what people really want to build on Ronin for. Like I've seen some people tweet like, if it's not on Ronin, I'm not playing, which is kind of fucked up, but that's loyalty, right?
Yeah, and I think that's some loyalty that you don't see in a lot of other chains, and I think it also leads back to the whole idea of Ronin really is just a chain for games. I mean, you talk about Avalanche, and yes, they have AVAX Gaming, but Avalanche also has a lot of other stuff, a lot of DeFi protocols and everything. Pretty much every chain that has like or is trying to put a focus in game has a lot of other stuff going on. Ronin, from what I understand, is really just games, and Ronin also decides what games are allowed to build on Ronin. I remember, I think like a couple of weeks ago, there was a game that was saying, "Oh, we're coming to Ronin, we're coming to Ronin," and Ronin was like, "Hey, no, you're not. Like, we never had these conversations. You guys aren't actually building on here, so we don't know who you talk to, but you guys are not building on Ronin." And I think that's a really close ecosystem because when people think of decentralization, they're like, "Oh, anyone can build on any blockchain." But I think Ronin is doing a little bit different. And do you think that's really the way that these gaming blockchains should be going? Like, hey, we have a centralized hub and we decide what games to allow to build in this ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think there's like positives and negatives of decentralization. I think the primary reason people try to do decentralization is so that they don't go to jail from the SEC. But SEC is not criminal. But anyway, so like when we think about that relationship that I mentioned previously about how games want users from the chains, they like if you've ever talked to games or they're typically like, hey, we want to be the star, right? Like they're the ones who want to be the pixels of their chain, right? And if you think about it that way, like, wait, what happens when a chain has 500 games? They all want to be that star, right? And then it comes to a point of like, okay, well, 500 games, you have 300 and what 62 days in a year, 64. um
65.
and 65. Oh my god, I don't count days anymore because I just work all day.
Yeah, you're good, man. But they've all got main character syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay, well, if you have so many days in a year and you have 500 games, then everybody's gonna want promotion. So how do you do it? It's like what you make like 100 tweets a day about every game. Like, how do you curate the content of your chain? I think that's the thing, right? It's like, I think the benefit of being centralized for now, anyways, in terms of what content goes on the chain, is you can focus on what content comes on, and because you are able to focus, everybody on the chain is able to do one thing at a time, and then that is what's special about the Ronin effect, right? It's like when one thing happens, everybody's gonna do that one thing. Like when we did Kydro,
which is why you see like, I mean, you mentioned the sorry, I'll let you go in a second, but you mentioned before about how like Pixels was like, dude, we don't want to lose the couple thousand active users. I was muted for a second. I was looking that up. They're like averaging over 900,000 active users right now daily. That's insane. And it's I think it's alluding to the point that you're making that, hey, it's because there's not 500 games for them to go try out. Once you're on Ronin, once you're passionate about it, you're going to play one of their leading games. And if Pixel gets to be that star, they're going to get all of those users that would otherwise be spread out among 500 different games.
yeah. So like when we look at a lot of the pro players, because previously it used to only be actually titles, right?
Okay.
And then Machines Arena and a couple other games were the first games that came to Ronin, and then the second wave we saw Aperon, and then
Yep.
Pixels is in the third wave of games that actually came on the chain. So like we helped them do go to market for all these projects, but when we look at all these games, it's like TMA, that like they had the spotlight during that time. Pixels, when they came on, we had 2 weeks where it was only Pixels. Like literally, we only talked about Pixels, right? And I think that's what really got them started, but also because they had a really good retention loop. But what we saw was like when a lot of players who are playing Axie, because Axie is like a card game. There's PvE mode, but primarily people play because it's competitive, right? We saw actually a lot of the competitive players go to Aperon because it was like TFT with cards mixed in and very, very hyper competitive. And it's like you had to micro your units. And then we saw a lot of the casual players play Pixels, right? So we're seeing like players really pick their niche in terms of what games and what titles they like. Like personally, I like Pixels more because I can't sit there and like play a competitive game for 20 minutes and torture my time. I just play for like a couple minutes and then I do something else.
Yeah, and I used to be the hyper competitive, and I just you need a lot of time to be the top at any game, and time is a currency that I am short on. So I've become a casual gamer, sadly. Caesar's the competitive side of 100x, so he's still trying to
Okay.
win all these tournaments for us.
I try to get in there, try to make sure we represent. But I wanted to ask a question because when you in the beginning of the conversation you were talking about sort of like, hey, if the onboarding process in any chain right now is still a headache for most people, which is why we don't really see mass adoption. All these steps, we tend to lose a lot of people along the steps. You maybe get them on Binance, but then to get them to Binance to ETH mainnet, you lose a chunk there. From ETH mainnet to Ronin, you lose a whole another chunk there. And I think when we had Jeremy Horn from Exterior here, they were talking like, hey, if Ronin fixes their onboarding and they can figure out how to get people to Ronin as quickly as possible without all the steps, they have it figured out because you guys already have the culture. You have the players that love Ronin. It's just the onboarding process that might be one of the missing puzzles there. Do you think that's going to be a focus that will happen soon for Ronin? And what do you think are some of the ideas or ways that can be fixed? Because if that does happen, I mean, you guys already have pretty much everything else, or Ronin already has pretty much everything else sort of already figured out.
Yeah, so it was super hard back then, like insanely hard. But now with Binance and Coinbase, you can actually get Ronin with and other tokens directly through like Binance Pay and Coinbase Pay, I think. So they're already working on those strategic partnerships to help with onboarding. And we're also seeing like significant improvements with the wallet itself. So they definitely have that in mind.
Yeah, and I will say I've used Ronin's ecosystem. I've played a lot of the games on them. And the Ronin wallet, although I don't like the fact that I have to have another wallet. I mean, I try to use Rabbit for everything. So having another wallet isn't the best experience for me personally. But the Ronin wallet itself has to be one of the better ones out there in the space right now. When all these things that have to have me have a wallet, the Ronin one is actually a pretty good experience in the sense that like I see all my NFTs right away, everything, and it's all sort of interconnected because the ecosystem is so close and so tightly close together. And the other thing that I really enjoy is that I wouldn't have tried Pixels on my own, but the reason why I went ahead and tried it is because I actually got a Kydro Spark suit. And I was like, well, I'm actually going to have a skin on there, so might as well go check it out and see what kind of skin it looks like. So there really is something there.
Yeah, I've purchased quite a few skins just to play them on Pixels. I think some of them might have been rugs where their projects aren't active. But yeah, like I have let me see. Like I have Ronin Wallet, I have MetaMask, I have Phantom for Solana, I have Magic Eden for Bitcoin. I have another one with a K logo for another chain where I had to claim an airdrop for Wolves. It's crazy. It's just like there's so many wallets in Web3, but I think like the real way to actually get visibility in users so far is just word of mouth and getting people to onboard their friends, family, cousins, whatever, so that they can just be there and help hold their hand as they're like, oh, I made my wallet. That was actually not that difficult. And then they can just start playing.
No, I was going to ask, how do you feel? Because we've been talking a lot about the Ronin ecosystem, the games, but where you come in as well with Moku is sort of bringing the creators to sort of fit everything and bring the puzzle together. Where do you think creators fit into the picture of Ronin's vision as they move forward?
Yeah. So what I will say is Ronin has about 3,000 creators. Web3 has about 200 gaming creators. So 3,000 gaming creators, right? Ronin creators are very loyal to Ronin because they understand like the ecosystem, the support that they're getting, and the potential that they're here for, right? And so when we look at the creators like Moku, we do creators, and then we also have our platform, which is Moku HQ. So we do a lot of the publishing through the platform and using the creators. And when anything comes down to Ronin, like what the creators do amazingly is they only talk about the thing, which is like, and then it just compounds with the community, right? Like all the creators are focused, like Duet Monsters just launched, right? And it's a mini game that's like you just move two thumbs and you go to the music and you eat candy and fruits. And everybody was talking about it on the timeline, right? And that's what the run effect is. It's like when someone comes in, you give them the grand welcome.
And honestly, I actually downloaded Duet Monsters yesterday. So I was trying it out last night. Well, before the melatonin was kicking in, I was like trying to make sure I didn't fall asleep. I was trying to figure out how it worked. And it's a lot of fun. And the cool thing was that, I mean, I have some Axies to do like my daily Axie stuff and everything. And as soon as I connected my Mavis account, it all just sort of fit in together. And I think that's a really good user experience where I didn't have to really do a lot to get my Axies over. I didn't have to do any bridging. It just was just there. And I think that's really cool. Go ahead, Matthew.
I have a pretty like side question to I don't usually play devil's advocate. Don't even like that phrase, but I'm just thinking
Sure.
about like what in my mind, I come from the perspective of I was a DeFi investor for years before ever, and a DeFi creator before coming into the Web3 gaming scene. And so when I'm asking that question, like, hey, which blockchains or which platforms are going to win this battle? I don't know that it'll be just one. I think that it'll be a couple. But I do think that like the 10 that are competing, that's too many. Too many. You get Epic and Steam, right? You don't have another 8 of them. And so I think eventually
Yeah.
we're going to see that slim down. And so I'm asking like, that I want to know the bull case, but I want to ask the hard questions too. One question that I have about like the closed ecosystem, right, is with pretty much all the other, that's a pretty unique proposition. And so I think there's no one else really competing on that front as maybe, I guess maybe Xteria would be curated as well. But like if you look at AVAX, you look at Immutable, if you look at, I'm blanking on the others. If you look at the others that are like just straight up layer ones that anyone can go build on, you essentially let the market decide, hey, this game will succeed if we think it's fun as gamers, and it will die if it sucks. And it's another point and click Ponzi scheme. But if it's good, the market decides it's good. And we get to decide because we get to play it. Do you think that like anything about curation is like too Web 2? I'm thinking about like how frustrated gamers are with EA and Ubisoft and Activision and like the publishers that we all kind of hate right now. And it feels like, dang, dude, you guys just keep recycling these mid-tier games. You stifle creativity. Do you think that at any point, like curation does stifle creativity? Is it a net positive all the time? Is there something that Ronin has to like walk a tightrope with to make sure that being a closed ecosystem is not like recreating things in Web 2 that we wanted to evolve out of?
Yeah. So I think there is no perfect solution for any of this because at the end of the day, no one has found a true model at scale. Because
Right.
when we compare to Web 2, like they have billions in revenue, trillions in like they have insane amount of revenue as an industry, and they have an insane number of players as well, right? You can make a business in Web3 with less users because there's a lot more people willing to spend, but they don't spend because they feel like they're customers they and love the thing and just like spending. The majority of them just spend because they want to make money, right?
Right.
So when
Very
we
few
look at
gamers, lots of investors.
yes, exactly. So when we look at Web3, like player promises and player trust is something that is so critical, right? Because a lot of these projects, like what was it? Block. that did their airdrop, right? And they're like,
Yeah.
wait, no, we're changing this. And everybody's just like, get blocked. um, it's because of that player promise, right? So
Right.
I think that's the risk is like when everyone knows you are the person that curates the content. And when everybody knows that you have a player promise, like even with Exterio, like when they first did their overworld mint, everybody was pissed because it was like a gas war. They had to set limits, and a lot of people didn't get to mint because it was first come first serve and over allocated, right? So a lot of people were like doing content, and a lot of creators were doing stuff, and they just weren't able to mint. And people got pissed because that it's just all about player promise. And I think Jeremy fixed a lot of those things because he just put himself in front of it and be like, hey, how can I fix this for you? How can I rectify
He's a
this?
stand-up guy, so he was able to like work on saving the
Exactly.
player promise.
Yeah. So like that trust is basically what you're fighting against, and that's the risk.
That's true. I mean, if you think about like, right, that is the essence of Web3, right? That it's trustless. That if you go full decentralized, there is no one to trust. But if you want to tap into anything that is not like full decentralized maxi, you're putting all of the trust on your own shoulders. Has Ronin had any instances like what you mentioned with like Overworld, where people have been pissed off and they've had to address that yet? Or is that like, ooh, we hope that doesn't happen? It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, of course. They've been operating for many years. Like there was many times when everybody was like, wait, this is not what we expected.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, you just got to move fast enough. Be like, oh shit, sorry, we did not want this to happen and did not expect this. We're going to go fix this. Right. I think one of the biggest ones was probably Axie Homelands when the game changed significantly because like the original people that owned Axie Land was Axie Whales. And then they got AXS staking and they were like, oh, we're getting free money for just staking our land. And then they were like, oh, we're going to move all the earnings to in-game. And then they changed the game mechanics and they're like, wait, we actually don't like playing this game. Right. And then Jiho is like, hey, tell me what's wrong with this and we're going to go fix it. Right. So there's been many occasions when player trust was just like at a negative and they've just, always been able to fix it. I think that's what gives them their strength.
And when we were talking about sort of like from an outside perspective, like we're looking at it from someone that's not in the Ronin ecosystem solely, we're like, hey, maybe the onboarding could be one of those issues or one of the things that can get improved in order to take Ronin to the next level. From someone that spends a lot of time in the Ronin ecosystem, where do you think Ronin as a whole should put in its focus on in order to get it that much closer to the masses, that mass adoption that everyone talks about?
Yeah. So I think with Ronin, they're already like working on the infrastructure. They're already working on the change side. So I think what they really need to do right now is just making sure the content that they curate that comes to the chain is great and amazing because they've set the bar at a place where like, hey, we've brought on Kydro, Pixels, and all these other like awesome partners. They have such a high bar now where like everybody is expecting something amazing.
So it's that idea of like, hey, you brought Pixels, you brought Kydro, you brought Ragnarok. The next one can't be a flop. You can't bring some small game that no one cares about or that everyone hates right after all that.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's what they just need to like really focus on. Is like, hey, what is that next project that like is going to be a hit?
Yeah, that makes sense. Does Ronin, are they down with like, I guess Pixels wasn't huge when, I mean, you mentioned the number of users because I was going to say like, I mean, the problem with that is then you get into the like the AAA mindset where everyone just wants like, bring me the big game. But dude, so many times like the good game is the one you didn't know about yet. Are they like down to bring little fun indie titles, or is it like, are they looking for heavy hitters every time?
Yeah, so I think it's more so about the founders actually than necessarily just the games. Because if you look at Luke, he's been building and iterating for 2 years before Ronin. And he, like, I think the thing that Pixels does really well is live ops, right? Because you can't just make a game. Like once it's live,
Yeah,
You
how
have
do you
to ship
support it well?
features. You have to do like QA every patch. You have to like roll stuff back if it doesn't work, and then you have to like give customer support. So there's like a whole cycle of things that you have to do once your game is live. And Luke is just like, and the team has just been iterating every day for the last 2 years, and like in that like fighting mentality of like, hey, I'm gonna make this better no matter what, right? So when we look at all these games, like Pixels didn't really get a lot of traction. If you look at Pixels, like Sunflower Land, there's like so many farming games, right?
Yeah.
And I think Luke's personality and the team's mentality was really this like the separator, the differentiator that really got them onto Ronin. And I think that that's like part of it, right? So I definitely don't think AAA is made for like Web3 right now, because it's just, if you look at Web3, a lot of people are even on mobile, right? Not everybody
Yeah.
is on
I know, man.
PC.
I'm having to use freaking BlueStacks for everything because I don't play mobile games usually.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so we're seeing like a lot of people playing on mobile because we're all like old. I'm old at least.
Yep. No, I know.
Um,
I feel like a boomer in crypto, and which is funny because I think most industries, I'm like, I'm a young man, but then I get into crypto and I'm like, I am the top of the old age bracket. So we're in the same boat.
yeah, so it's just like I think the main people like off the grid, Shrapnel, they're going for that AAA status, right? But I think a lot of
Right.
people are focusing on mobile first,
Just make games that
PWA,
people have fun playing. Yeah.
yeah, just like shorter game loops, and yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have a totally off-topic question. I was thinking about some of the other. I know we've mentioned Xterra a couple times. I would say, yeah. I mean, if I had to pick like the ones that I'm like, "Ooh, I'm bullish on you guys right now." Ronin's in the conversation. Xterra's in the conversation. Immutable's in the conversation. And Avax Gaming is pretty heavily in the conversation for me. And I was talking. I was trying to remember who. I was literally just looking at my Twitter, trying to remember who it was. I was talking to someone last week, and I asked them. It was a game developer, why they were building on Avax, and he straight up said, he was like, the vibes, like they're immaculate. The vibes are the best. I'm there for the vibes. And I think about, you've mentioned culture twice with Ronin now. And I'm curious, like, what is the culture of Ronin? Because I think Avax is doing a good job at like people that just like want the vibes. And I think that's part of Avax's culture already, because they're so meme heavy, and you've got like the cool sunglasses. Why am I blank? Pit Vipers. I own a pair. Why am I blanking on the name? You got the Pit Vipers and the mullets. I kind of got a mullet right now. It's like Avax has vibes. What is the culture of Ronin that maybe for people that would care a lot about like art and culture and conversation and personality, and maybe it's a little less about like, well, I don't really care about the tech, or I don't really care about the investing side. Like, I'm here for the personality of the blockchain. What would
Yeah.
How would you define like Ronin's personality or Ronin's vibes?
Yeah, I mean, Ronin's just a home for gamers, right? Like the gaming culture of people just like having fun, trolling each other, being I think people are also pretty nice on Ronin as well. You don't see as much savagery, maybe some between friends, but
Which is like missing in gaming in general.
yeah, but most people are like really, really nice, and like they're willing to help and onboard you, because like what we've seen is when somebody is like, hey, I just won my first Axie on Moku, like we've seen other community members give them 2 more Axies so that they can play and get into the ecosystem, play Origins, do the bounty board. And I think that's like that gifting culture and that like taking care of each other culture is what Ronin's all about.
That's sweet. I dig that. I like that a lot. Go ahead, Caesar.
Yeah, I was gonna say in the topic of onboarding, one more thing. If someone's listening to this and they haven't tried anything on Ronin, where do you think would be the best place to get started? Because when you talk about Axie, you do see a lot of people have been playing for years. And when I even got onboarded, I was like, bro, I am lost. I don't know where to get started. I don't know which ones are good. I don't know what the meta is. I had to watch a couple YouTube videos and try to figure out how the marketplace works. So where would you say, hey, if you're just starting out in the Ronin ecosystem and you want to see what the Ronin culture is all about, this is the best place to get started?
Shameless plug, but go to Moku. hq.moku.gg, and then you can actually see all the games, because what we do is we work with Sky Mavis on curating the content as well. So last week we just finished up Kydro for their Clan Wars. And that was like 10
Bubblegum
days.
Violence gang right here, baby. Let's go. I think you're.
Did you roll?
Yeah.
How many times did you roll? What did you
3.
get?
I think I got some Pixel and some Ron. But
You could roll up to 6.
6? I
Keep
thought it was
rolling.
only 3.
Because it
man.
Rolling,
resets.
Papa.
Yeah,
Oh, man. I think
because
I
it
might have
resets daily.
sold.
Yeah, you didn't.
I think I
you didn't-
sold.
Mm.
You threw.
Yeah, because yeah, you can just go on there, check out what we're promoting, and then just win some prizes as well. So
And
there's
that's
some
where we
incentive in
met
that.
you. So big win on Moku. Shout out to Moku. Last question I have for you.
Yeah.
Your favorite game on Ronin right now? You're bullish on Ronin. Obviously, we've talked about why you're bullish on Ronin. But what's your favorite game on Ronin?
Oh, I already said it. It's Pixels.
Pixels. Cool.
Yeah. I just play for a couple minutes, do my thing, and then I do my work, and then I can come back a couple hours later.
Dig it. Sweet. If you are listening and you want to get involved over there, we're going to have links to Moku right here. Go show them some love. They are building stuff worth paying attention to. And you should follow Han on Twitter as well. I followed you for a while. You post good stuff on there. We appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Of course, appreciate you guys having me.
We'll see you next time.